Welcome, Sally Galvin, entrepreneur, Australian representative and ambassador for mental health awareness. I'm passionate about creating grounded, resilient, well-adjusted children reach their full potential and fly. And I'm here today to speak with Mary Harris. Mary has a degree in, she's a Bachelor of Applied Science, chiropractic, and for 34 years, she has been successfully practicing and teaching the importance of holistic healing. 9 years of training, teaching, practicing in California, and then the rest here in Perth, Western Australia. Mary, actually in Melbourne as well. Mary did a lot of her study in Melbourne as well. So Mary is the current president of the Food and Farm Alliance in Serpentine, Jarrah Dale Shire, that runs an annual festival and lots of workshops every year. But it also hosts over 2,000 plus subscribers. So, Mary is an expert in the field of holistic healing. Everybody knows I am, if you've seen any of my stuff, I'm passionate about mental health. But we need to understand that what we put into our bodies has a big impact on how we think and how our brain works. So, welcome Mary, and please can you give us your expert opinion on the importance of what we eat, actually really comes down to it, and the impact it has on our minds.
Yeah, thanks Sally. Look, there's been an explosion of information over the last 10 years, and particularly the last 5 years, that really indicates that all modern chronic diseases, which we're all well aware of, have their source in inflammation. So it begs the question, what is the source of why are we so inflamed? So, and unfortunately, a lot of our current medical practices and government recommendations around things aren't addressing this root cause problem of these chronic diseases. So what I now know, and it's really evident in lots and lots of research through all the world's best medical journals, etc., is that this inflammation is the trigger for whatever disease or condition, including mental health problems. And what we have to look at is three basic things. We come with a genetic propensity, or a blueprint if you like, from our parents and our grandparents, our ethnic backgrounds, whatever. So we have that basic roadmap. Now, if those genes that make up that roadmap can be turned on, and we know now that genes can be really easily turned on and turned off by things that we subject ourselves to. It could be the food, or expose ourselves to, really, what I should say. So it could be the environment that you live in, exposure to pesticides or herbicides or diesel fumes or really lousy living conditions. Or it could be the food that you eat, that sort of stuff. So, and then the third thing is that if you have a leaky gut. Now, our gut is only one cell thick, the lining of our gut. And so it's really easily upset if you put something in there and it doesn't agree with you, and your immune system has to respond to it. So what happens is, and everybody knows this, when you've had a gastro or something like that, the reason your body responds so violently is your immune system's response to whatever it was that shouldn't be there. And so your immune system basically says, oh, we've got to get this stuff out of you really quick. It'll either make you vomit to get rid of it, or give you diarrhea, or a combination of everything else, and you know how bad you feel. Because that inflammatory process triggered by your immune system in its attempt to defend you also makes you feel really crappy. Your brain doesn't work, you just want to go to bed, turn the lights off, and some people say they feel like they want to die when they're in that state. Their mental health goes down the tube with these huge responses. So if we accept that premise that it's your immune system doing its best to defend you, can also have ramifications in multiple parts of your body. So if we go back to my 3 triggers about having the genetic propensity, the trigger to turn your gene on or off, and a leaky gut, those 3 things are the things that set you up for these chronic diseases.
Right.
The thing that I'm most interested in is the importance and problems with foods that we eat. And we know, for instance, that 80% of the population has an inflammatory response to gluten.
Right.
And gluten, when you eat it, produces a substance called zonulin, which you don't have to remember, but zonulin tends to make your gut lining leaky.
Right.
So that means that if your gut lining is a bit leaky, and then you eat something and it goes through these little leaky holes, and your immune system is on the other side waiting and goes, oh, I don't think this is right, let's get out the Army, Navy and the Air Force and blast this to pieces because it shouldn't be here. And that is your inflammatory response to that, getting past the barriers of your of your gut lining. So gluten is a really big one. Now, there's been terrible things that have happened that have all colluded against us in the last 50 years in particular. Scientists and people who want to produce more wheat, especially in Australia, have been fiddling with wheat, and they've actually increased the content of gluten in wheat by about 50%.
Right.
So anybody who had a little susceptibility before, it might have been perfectly fine 50 years ago. And we also, let's say bread, as an example, we used to make bread in a very different way.
Yeah.
We would make bread and it would sit overnight to ferment, and in that process, fermenting process, it breaks down the gluten. So then the bread that you ate the day or 2 days later wasn't such a big problem. Well, now we make bread in 45 minutes. There's no breaking down of the gluten, and then we're getting a double dose whammy. So once your gut is upset, and it could be upset by an infectious disease, a lot of people will tell you they had a bout of gastro and they've never been the same since, because it was so bad that it really disturbed their gut. And all the microbiome, the bacteria that live. What we know about bacteria now is absolutely amazing. And we tend to separate our body parts. We think of a brain, we think of a gut, we think of, muscles, bones, and whatever else. And what we know now is that the bacteria in your gut, which are breaking down your food, are sending more messages to your brain on how to behave than the other way around.
Right.
So the gut is really important. So we need to be really aware of the importance of what consuming what foods does to our whole body. I mean, I see people who have joint pain and muscle pain, and half the time I'm saying, I think you should change your diet, which seems funny for a chiropractor. But anyway, the other things that we know really cause inflammation, sugar. You tell me what teenager isn't eating tons of sugar. Then dairy. Now, modern dairy is pasteurised and it's homogenised, neither of which is good for a leaky gut, because now those little molecules of beaten up dairy can go through the walls of our gut, and that's why so many people have a dairy problem. So, you can see where I'm going with this. We've got a leaky gut, then some of the foods that we feed it are causing us a problem. And those little bacteria that we have in our gut are really, really important to them. If you get your balance of your bacteria out, some of the little devils down there produce substances that can cross the blood-brain barrier and cause immediate inflammation in the brain. Right. So if we go back to our feeling terrible when we've got the flu, and how your mind doesn't work quite so well when you're highly inflamed,
think clearly,
you don't think clearly, then accept my premise that what you're eating, and if it's upsetting your gut, it can easily upset your brain. So we've got to look after our kids, feed them unprocessed, unadulterated food that hasn't been exposed to glyphosate, herbicides, all those sorts of things, because a lot of those things are helping nasty things cross the blood-brain barrier and affecting our mental health.
Mary, thank you so much for that wealth of knowledge. That was really interesting. Thank you so
My
much.
pleasure.
Thank
My
you.
pleasure. I
Thank
hope
you
that
very
helps a
much.
little bit.
Mary, that was brilliant.